Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power!
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today's Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network here in Atlanta, where HBCU Aware Fest is taking place this week. The United Nations passed a resolution proposed by Ghana's President John Mahama to Folks, today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network, live here in Atlanta, where I was, of course, moderating a panel today at HBCU Aware Fest. The United Nations passed a resolution proposed by Ghana's President John Mahama to describe the transatlantic chattel slave trade as, quote, the gravest crime against humanity. They call for reparations as a concrete step towards remedying historical wrongs. We'll tell you the countries that voted against the measure, including the United States and Israel. Small businesses are taking major hits from Donald Trump's chairs, and a report from the Small Business Majorities Network shows rising costs, declining revenue, and growing concerns about reduced consumer spending and corporate monopolies. We'll talk with a small business owner for the Small Business Majorities National Council. In tonight's Tech Talk, we look to tracing your roots and find your family's lineage. We'll speak with the creators of the app Kinkofa, who wanted to make the process of finding information on your family's ancestry simple. That and more, folks. It's time to breathe the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Ghanaian President John Mahama has received overwhelming support from United Nations members to recognize the past transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity and the need for reparations for African nations. A resolution on the matter was introduced on Wednesday at the General Assembly in New York. It received 123 votes in favor, 3 votes against. They were Argentina, Israel, and the United States, while 52 countries, mostly European, including the UK, Portugal, and Spain, all abstained. This is when the vote actually took place.
Resolution A/80/L48 entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the Gravest Crime Against Humanity. will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
No.
The result of the vote. The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 123. Against, 3. Abstentions, 52. Therefore, draft resolution A/80/L48 is adopted.
Folks, as we said, the three countries that actually voted against this resolution were the United States, Argentina, and Israel. The countries that actually abstained from the vote: Albania, Andorra, Armenia, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Canada, Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Fiji, Finland, France, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Montenegro, the Netherlands, New Zealand, North Macau, Norway, Oman, Palau, Paraguay, Poland, Portugal, Romania, San Marino, Sao Tome, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, as well as Ukraine and the United Kingdom. They all abstained. There were 52 total abstentions, 3 against, and 122, of course, the votes that actually were for this numbered 123. Ghana's President Mahama spoke about the transatlantic slave trade earlier today.
Your Excellency, Secretary General of the UN, Excellencies, permanent representatives, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, progress is made in little steps. It is the forward motion towards something better, and changes often come incrementally. Today marks the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. It is a day on which we honor the memory of the approximately 13 million African men, women, and children who were enslaved over the course of several centuries. We remember them through articles, oral histories, through broadcast programs, books, music, visits to museums, monuments, and memorials such as the Ark of Return, located right here at the Visitors Plaza of the United Nations headquarters. Through these activities, we do more than remember. We document and educate. We gain greater perspective. We find the delicate balance of learning from history so that we do not repeat it while leaving our pain behind. In doing so, we begin to heal individually within our immediate communities and also within the global community. This day of remembrance did not happen by accident. In 2006, our global community gathered here, just as we have done today, and resolved to designate the 25th of March of the following year a day of remembrance. It marked significant progress. Then the following year, in 2007, we decided to make the event an annual one so that the 25th March of every year would be the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. That marked an additional step in our forward motion. And so it's indeed fortuitous to be here today, 2 decades later, addressing the General Assembly on behalf of the African Group regarding the draft resolution entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the Gravest Crime Against Humanity. In September last year, at the 80th session of the General Assembly, I stood in this exact place and served notice that Ghana will move a motion to declare the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. This current draft resolution is a result of months of consultation and consensus building by continental bodies, nations, experts, scholars, and jurists, with the sole aim of achieving a united front and grounding the final outcome in truth, compassion, and moral conscience, remembrance, education, and dialogue. So today we come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice. The adoption of this resolution serves as a safeguard against forgetting. It also challenges the enduring scars of slavery. Madam President, let me conclude with 2 significant quotes by 2 great leaders of history, one of them white and one of them black. The former President of the United States of America, Theodore Roosevelt, said, and I quote, "With a great moral issue involved, neutrality does not serve righteousness. For to be neutral between right and wrong is to serve wrong." Again, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King also reminds us, and I quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We've traveled this long road, each step guided by a desire to be better and to do better. Each step bringing us closer to the kind of world we would want to leave for our children. And so delegates, on this beautiful day in March, we're called to stand on the right side of history. Let it be recorded that when history beckoned, we did what was right for the memory of the millions who suffered the indignity of the slave trade and those who continue to suffer racial discrimination. Let our vote on this resolution restore their dignity and humanity.
Now, yesterday, Ghana's president did not hold back criticizing the United States and Donald Trump for their attack on Black history, Black authors, and Black books.
Here in the United States, Black history courses are being removed from school curricula. Schools are being mandated to stop teaching students about the truth of slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses. Books about those topics are being banned in schools and public libraries. Museums, art centers, and other institutions whose budgets rely in any way on public funds are being prohibited from scheduling exhibitions and programs or from displaying materials promoting racial awareness or Black history. Much like the law that was put in place to regulate the punishment of the enslaved in Barbados, these policies are becoming a template for other governments as well as some private institutions. At the very least, they are slowly normalizing the erasure They are slowly normalizing erasure.
All right, folks, joining us right now, national security law and foreign relations expert Johanna LeBlanc. Glad to have you here. Johanna, break down, what does that actually mean? I mean, obviously, this is quite significant, and it's quite telling, the three countries that voted no.
Well, thank you so much, Roland, for having me on. First and foremost, I think it is a great thing that President John Mahama introduced the resolution acknowledging the gravity of transatlantic slavery. However, the reality is that a resolution is just a resolution. It doesn't necessarily have any, it's not legally binding, right? And in addition to that, what it does is that it just elevates the conversation diplomatically and politically.
Looks like we're having an issue with Johanna's signal, so we're going to get that taken care of. Now, folks, before today's vote by the United Nations, Ghana's president led a solemn wreath-laying ceremony at the African Burial Ground National Monument in New York City, paying tribute to the nearly 20,000 Africans who were enslaved and buried there. The poignant gesture marked Ghana's commemoration of the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. It was part of a broader push for reparatory justice. New York City President Zoran Mamdani, he spoke at that ceremony as well.
First, thank you to the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, for hosting today's wreath-laying. Ghana is a nation that holds deep meaning for me. My father gave me the middle name Kwame after Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, a leader who fought for freedom. And that longing of freedom unites all of humanity across geography and history. It is that longing for freedom and the sacrifices made by so many to win it that we are here today to commemorate. And I want to acknowledge a number of leaders that are also here with us. It was a pleasure to be preceded by Reverend Al Sharpton, as well as members of the President's team and representatives from across the region, including the Caribbean. I also am here with a number of leaders from our administration. We have our Commissioner, Afia Atamensa, who is here with us. Commissioner Ana Maria Archia from the Office of International Affairs. We have our Public Advocate, Jumani Williams, who is here with us, as well as State Senator James Sanders, Assemblymember Al Taylor, so many other leaders, including our outgoing Commissioner as well. And we are here in many ways because nearly 400 years ago, the first enslaved people arrived at the port of New York. 22 souls, likely from Angola, were originally aboard a Portuguese ship bound for sugar plantations in Cartagena before the Dutch intercepted and enslaved them once more, this time under the Dutch West India Company. And so began a shameful history of slavery here in our city, one that is just as much a part of our story as the Revolutionary War battles that were fought in Brooklyn or the bridges and skyscrapers that defied any precedent. According to New Amsterdam's 1665 tax list, 12% of the residents of this city at the time were slaveholders. By the mid-1700s, New York City was home to the most enslaved people outside of the South, until the Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery in 1799. Even then, freedom was partial and often cruelly withheld. None of the enslaved New Yorkers who helped to build Wall Street ever benefited from the enormous wealth that it created. And the dignity and security granted to so many of our earliest settlers was denied to those of African descent, even those fortunate enough to be deemed free. Land deeds once granted were rescinded, the franchise of voting so often out of reach. Our city and its incredible spirit, wealth, and global significance is inextricably intertwined with the horrific history of the transatlantic slave trade. one need look no further for proof than the very ground upon which we stand today, which was at one time the largest cemetery of black New Yorkers, many of whom were enslaved. It was only when construction began on a 34-story federal building on this site in 1991 that our city paused to reckon with what was here. I am grateful to the community members, historians, archaeologists, all those who helped to reveal what lay beneath our streets, to draw attention to the history of our city, and as was said earlier, the tension that also lies at the heart of it. That history must never be forgotten, and when we tell it, let us tell it in its totality. For we know the history of black New Yorkers is not just one of oppression. It is one of resistance, of organizing, of fighting for freedom, among so much else. Let us tell the stories of black New Yorkers who fought in the slave revolt of 1712, demanding dignity only 1 year after the first slave market in New York City was erected at the foot of Wall Street. Let us tell the story of the community of Weeksville, founded in 1838, just 11 years after New York State outlawed slavery, and how it would grow into a self-sustaining, safe haven for escaped and freed slaves with its own schools, churches, and newspapers. And let us tell the story of the many who continue to resist the long shadow of slavery and discrimination. From the thousands of men, women, and children who participated in the silent march on Fifth Avenue in 1917, to the activists and archivists who have continued to honor the legacies of those whose names would otherwise be lost to time. Today, as we gather to remember the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, let us recommit to the work of building a New York City where every New Yorker can live a life of dignity and freedom that so many other New Yorkers were so cruelly denied, that so many sacrificed so much to obtain. And in a city that is proud to celebrate the intertwined nature of black history and New York City history, let us also ensure that this is a city where the writing of black history can continue in the weeks and months and years to come. May we honor the memory of those that we have lost as we build a New York City worthy of its struggles.
All right, folks, we have Johanna LeBlanc back. Johanna, you were saying that it's a resolution, but the reality is it is important to see the folks who are on record and where they stand in terms of other countries.
No, absolutely. I think part of this process, part of the reason that President Mahama introduced this resolution is because he wanted to elevate the conversation politically and certainly diplomatically. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. However, what President Mahama is asking for in terms of reparations is nothing unprecedented, right? Other groups have received reparations. You have the Japanese, you have the Holocaust survivors, and now African Americans or people of African descent want reparations for the harm that had been done to them. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. But however, in order for the UN to actually do something about this, he has to go to the UN Security Council. Otherwise, this is merely a resolution that will just elevate the conversation politically and diplomatically.
Well, and we know that the United States is one of several countries that has a permanent veto on the UN Security Council, and so that stops anything from moving forward.
Absolutely. And under this administration, it was expected that the Trump administration was not going to recognize this resolution, was not going to vote in favor of it, because as we know, this administration is anti anything that it considers to be DEI or anything that it considers to be bringing back history or setting the record straight, right? So it was expected. So I think this is the beginning of the process. We're not going to see the end of it today through this resolution. It's going to take some time. Perhaps under the next administration, the Mahama administration will lobby the United States to actually recognize this and bring it to the UN Security Council. But you also have to get China, which China actually voted to recognize this, as well as Russia, right? So there are a number of other ones who are a member of the UN Security Council who actually abstain from voting, whose votes will be vital to moving this process forward. I certainly applaud President Mahama for doing this. But at the same token, though, what does that mean, right? So if we're going to acknowledge this to be one of the worst things that have happened in history, an atrocity, what does that mean for people of African descent, perhaps who want to return back to the continent, right? Like, for example, if you wanted to move to Ghana, the citizenship process costs roughly $2,500, right? Whereas if you have a Jew who would like to return back to Israel, the process is actually, in many cases, free, right? To come back home. So I think the continent, collectively, through the African Union, should have a better system in place to better accommodate people of African descent who wish to perhaps return back home. Secondly, I think one of the worst things that happened to people of African descent, besides slavery, was the colonization of our minds, right? And until we train ourselves in the way we see ourselves, the way we see the continent, and the way we think about the world, I think no matter what kind of reparations that we have, as a group of people, it will be incredibly difficult to advance.
All right, Jahan LeBlanc, we certainly appreciate you joining us from Africa. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, bringing to my panel, Dr. Zachary Kirk, educator and content creator from Atlanta, Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO, Fair Election Center out of D.C., Patrick Schaefer, political philosopher and public scholar out of Chicago. Glad to have all three of you here. Zachary, I'll start with you. Listen, when you look at this here, again, does it carry weight? No. Is it a question of seeing where countries stand? Yes. Listen, you talk about Argentina, they have a serious issue with racism. Listen, a lot of the Nazis fled Germany after World War II, and they decamped to Argentina. And so you have Israel and the United States, the three countries voting no. And so let's talk about that, but also those 52 countries that abstained. A lot of European folks abstained.
It's criminal. It's embarrassing. We live in a nation that was built on the backs of our ancestors, enslaved people. And the least this country can do, not what they should do, which is reparations, not what they should do, which is ensure fair and adequate and equal opportunity to every single American citizen, because that's so far beyond the understanding of those that we, the American people, have put in power. But the least they can do is recognize the atrocities. This was the simplest, easiest thing this nation could have done to make a small step towards atonement for all of us who are those who remain of the evil that they did to our ancestors, and they couldn't even do that. This is extremely disappointing, and this is something that I'm so thankful that you're bringing to the forefront, and that needs to be echoed by your audience. We just share this and share this broadly so that our people know what our country continues to do to us every single day.
It was the least they could do. It did carry any weight whatsoever, Rebecca, but it's abundantly clear where they stand.
Roland, I had so many emotions watching that because this is one of the few experiences that I've ever had in life where I've seen another country stand up for me. And the reason why I say it like that, being a Black American whose family has been in this country for centuries, I don't have the luxury like some of my friends who are first, second, third generation in this country, where if it goes down in this country, they know their country of recent origin will stand up and say something. They know that that country's president or premier or ambassador is going to talk to this government about how their people are being treated in this country. But when you are a Black American in this country, you don't get that. And so to even see Ghana stand up and advocate for Black Americans in that way is so powerful, because we don't have that. We don't get that, because as far as people are concerned, we didn't have a history. As far as some people are concerned, Black Americans didn't have a history before 1619, and that simply is not true. So that was very powerful. But it also makes me think about whenever I go to Europe, I think about the last time I was in Portugal, I took a African tour of Portugal tour, and it was led by several Africans. And what was interesting about that tour, they really pointed out how across Portugal, they don't talk about their role in the slave trade. So there's many Portuguese citizens who have no idea the role that Portugal played in kicking off the transatlantic slave trade. And when I've done similar tours in France, it's a cognitive dissonance. So am I surprised that those European nations who primarily benefited from the transatlantic slave trade, aka the greatest human trafficking in human history, does it surprise me that they had nothing to say? No, but guess what? We're coming for our money.
Absolutely. Patrick, your thoughts?
I think it's pretty on brand for the United States. They've been pretty consistent. I think that the mere fact that we're talking about reparations and redress and repair is because that slavery has an afterlife. And there's a logic to that afterlife, that what we see is that if there was any rupture in slavery, it was just legal. But the logic and the system of slavery still persists. Had it not persist, then we would not be talking about the inequalities that we experience, that we need reparations for our history. How is history behind us if the structure of that history is still present with us? And so I think that it is a great conversation, and I'm more interested in what does material justice look like within this context.
Absolutely. And so we'll certainly see what is next, but we appreciate the Ghanaian president moving forth with this and getting these countries on the record. A quick break. We come back. We'll talk small businesses being impacted by these crazy economic policies of Donald Trump. Also, are we moving closer to boots being put on the ground in Iran? We'll talk about that with our panel as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Ryan Wilson, CEO and co-founder of The Gathering Spot, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Folks, small businesses across the country are feeling the effects as rising costs and slowing revenue continue to hit America. A new report and poll released by Voices of Main Street in the Small Business Majorities Network finds that nearly 2/3 of small business owners say their expenses have increased over the past 3 months, while only 9% say they have decreased. But nearly half report their revenue has declined over the same period. The poll reveals that small businesses are facing higher costs for supplies and inventory, along with reduced consumer spending. More than 70% say they're struggling to make payroll or cover basic expenses. Donald Trump's tariffs play a huge role. More than 70% of small businesses are reporting negative impacts, while healthcare and utility costs continue to rise. As a result, many businesses say they've been forced to raise prices, delay investments, freeze hiring, or even lay off workers. Due to these rising expenses, small business owners say monopolistic practices are harming them and that the federal government should do more to regulate monopolies. While some small businesses are turning to third-party AI tools to stay competitive. Concerns about privacy, accuracy, and security remain across the board. Joining us now, co-founder of Momentum Coffee and a member of Small Business Majority's National Council, Nikki Bravo. Nikki, glad to have you here. When we talk about small businesses, look, 65%, I mean, we look at this country is largely driven by small businesses. Now, let me explain. When the federal government classifies a small business in America as 499 employees or smaller. So when people think small business, they may be thinking, 8, 10, 15 people. That's not how it's categorized in this country. But the reality is when you start talking about, supply chain, goods and services. We had John Boyd on yesterday with the National Black Farmers Association talking about how this war with Iran has caused prices for fertilizer to go up 40%. Listen, when that happens, that eats into the profits of businesses that already have low profit margins.
Absolutely, hit it on the head. So we have coffee shops, so you can understand margins. So I'm the co-founder of a coffee shops here in Chicago, Illinois. We feel the impact of all of the things that you talked about, right? And I don't know that lawmakers always understand how this impacts very quickly small businesses. So you talked about the poll from the Small Business Majority. And absolutely, as our company is feeling those same things. Looking at comparison from year over year, we're seeing lower revenues. Restaurant businesses, the first 3 months of the year, we're used to it being slow, but not this slow. And we really point to things like the tariffs, uncertainty. Uncertainty for small businesses is a killer, right? It impacts our ability to be able to purchase. It impacts our ability to be able to hire. It impacts our ability to be able to know what's going to happen next. These tariffs and what's happening in and around the world also impacts customer sentiment. And again, when people aren't feeling good, Roland, they're not spending money. So all of these types of things impact negatively these small businesses that we say are the backbone of our country.
But take folks through who don't quite get this. When you're talking about, okay, you're owning a coffee shop. Just explain to people just the basic things that they don't get. I mean, we're talking, we're talking about cups and lids and all these things that people see when they walk into a store, not understanding every single one of those things, whereas packets of sugar or cream or whatever. I mean, there's a price associated with all of that. And depending upon who you order it from, you may be ordering from a country in the United States, but it could be serviced by a country that's by a company out of the country. That means that tariffs are going to be assessed on getting that good into the United States.
Absolutely. So for a coffee shop, for a small business like ours, we are looking at our highest costs, our cost of our goods, and the cost of our people, right? So let's just talk about a cup of coffee. It's not just a cup of coffee. It's the cup. It's the coffee as well. It's the sugar. It is the lids. It is the stoppers. And those things are oftentimes sourced through a distributor. That distributor is sourcing it from sometimes in large quantities out of the country. So when these tariffs go up and these tariffs, and even when they go down, let me tell you, those prices stay up. There's a saying, up like a rocket, down like a feather. We don't get to see those prices go down. And so what happens for a cup of coffee that was $3.50, you see it go up to $3.75, you see it go up to $4, because ultimately, Roland, what we have to do in order to stay in business is pass those costs along to the consumer in order for us to have the margins, right? A large portion of what we're doing is the cost of the things, the cups, the spoons, the knives, the forks, the things that we're buying, and also for our folks, right? In order to continue to be able to employ them, there are a lot of different pressures on small businesses with regard to employing people. And that's what you don't see. You walk in, we say, welcome to Momentum Coffee. And behind the scenes, we're juggling a lot. And it's getting more and more difficult. These rising costs and the tariffs and the uncertainty that those bring are really making it difficult for us to operate. We, Roland, in 2025, closed 2 of our locations. We started during in 2020, right? But we found that last year was one of our most difficult years, and then going into the beginning of this year, it being as difficult as well because of those rising costs.
You made a point about the biggest expenses. I tell people all the time, labor is the biggest expense, and when people are faced with rising costs, low profit margins, it is going to result in laying people off. Business owners have to look at the bottom line. They may love the person, they may appreciate their work, but what we are seeing when you drive those expenses up, then the biggest expense line is staff, personnel. That's the first thing in many places that's going to get cut.
Absolutely, and I think that lawmakers need to understand this, right? There is an impact, and those rising costs, right? You say 30% for the cost of our goods, the 30% for the labor, 30% for the overhead, right? Our rent for our location has gone up significantly as well, and with that, we have to make difficult choices, and oftentimes that is the biggest cut is labor. And we are employing people in our neighborhoods. It's what we do as a mission-based business. We are rooted in community and powered by coffee. However, in order to be able to protect the business, we have to sometimes make difficult costs. And so whether we start with cutting hours, so first it's, can you shave some hours here in order to save the folks? But at some point, the costs rise so large or increase so much that you have to cut employees. It's not what we want to do, it's what we have to do. And those are the things that we're being faced with and the questions and decisions that we're making as we look at things that we don't control. We are forced to look at things that we can control, and a lot of times that is the people that we have to make those choices.
Questions from the panel. Rebecca, you first.
So what should the average consumer do in order to support small businesses during this time?
Oh, well, I think you said it. Support small businesses, right? One, be intentional with your dollar. It does matter. It does matter where you go. It matters how often you go. It matters that you're showing up. And I think it's also really important to provide feedback to small businesses, right? Small businesses are in their communities in order to provide those services, oftentimes like ours, have a mission to serve and are doing lots of things to be that economic driver in their communities. So showing up and being supportive and also providing feedback where there might be some pain points on the consumer side. Hey, take it to your small business before you take it to the internet.
Zachary.
So, one thing that I want to know, I think it's important to emphasize to the audience that, some of us we've lived through this. We've gone through this in previous Republican administrations. And so as a business owner, what do you foresee as what will come next, and what can Black people do to survive that?
All right. Well, what comes next, right? Black people and Black businesses do survive, right? We've found a way to be able to, find the power in the pivot and continuing to do those things. One of the things that's a little bit different is that there's a lot of things happening at once, right? So there's the tariffs, there's the tightening of dollars and credit, there's increases in healthcare costs. And so I think we've seen it before, but all of these things happening at once, I think is what is a little bit different. What is on the other side of this? A lot of collaboration and a lot of conversation. I think one of the things that we're doing here is highlighting beyond the highlight reel, what's been difficult for small businesses. We have to talk about what our struggles are. We have to talk about what some of the resolutions are, and we have to work together to do that. And we work with other small businesses. We share what's working and what's not working for us. We talk about where to purchase things. We talk about how can we purchase things together and look at some things that maybe in history we've done, right, that we haven't done so much before or in the current, but need to do again so that we survive this and thrive and show up on the other end.
Patrick.
Yeah, so I'm interested in, and I would love to hear your thoughts. After reading this report, it says that between 67 and 71% of small business owners are insecure about whether they can make payroll or not. And it seems to me that this economic theory of tariffing our way into prosperity has given, at least for the working class, a silent killer like high blood pressure. And I'm interested in, what do you think the effects of that kind of silent killer when it comes to payroll? And it seems that perhaps the working class are maybe 1 or 2 paychecks from being in their own personal recession. And this seems on a macro level that this is leading toward that. And I'm wondering, how are you thinking about that?
How I think about how this all impacts people, right? We talked about healthcare, right? Small businesses, if they're making choices, might not, like ours, we don't provide benefits, right? And so we want to be able to provide benefits to our team. Other small businesses aren't able to do that as well. So imagine not being able to do that, people being stressed about their jobs, how that deals with, how that lands on them in terms of health is certainly something to think about. When we talk about payroll, it is difficult, right? It's something that you need people to work in order to make the money, and then it's time to make that payroll. It is not easy to hire people because it's not just the cost of the actual payroll, right? It is also the cost of the taxes that you pay. It's the other costs that are associated with it that oftentimes people don't understand and people don't see, and small businesses don't really get when they're embarking on this journey. So what I see is that there's rising costs. People are going to make decisions. There's going to be people that are laid off. And then what do they do? Where do they go? When you have these small businesses that were traditionally these employers in neighborhoods and they start to disappear from the landscape, it really starts to create this cycle. And so we're recognizing it now. We need to look at how we stop that from happening. We look at how we can support our small businesses. And those are the things that the small business majority really looks to advocate. How are the ways that we bring down healthcare costs? How do we provide better access to loans? Not tightening up credit, but how do we provide the access to loans for our small businesses so they can continue to do the work in the neighborhoods and support the economy, right? The local economy, and hire people. So I see that as a way for us to, not fall off this cliff and create this cycle of where it looks like we're going. I think it absolutely can be prevented if we're doing things like that.
Nikki, the point you were making there about benefits, and this is what people just don't get. So let's just say you have a business and you made a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 profit. I remember having this conversation with somebody about 5 years ago. We had a good year, and they said, "Well, are you going to give your staff bonuses?" And I said, "No." And she was like, "Well, I don't understand why." I said, "Okay, let me walk you through this." I said, "You don't know what, in our case, advertising." I said, "You don't know what the advertising is going to do the first quarter, the second quarter of the year." I said, and so you have to create an economic cushion when you are an owner. And I said, and you don't want to sit here and say your cushion is $50,000. I said, or $100,000. I said, because what's going to end up happening is if all of a sudden something happens, costs go up, again, economic downturn, you now are in a position where you may have to lay people off. I said, I would rather have an economic cushion of $500,000. So if my monthly expenses are $150,000, this is 5 years ago, my monthly expenses were, let's say, $125,000. I've now put myself in a position that, barring if everything just dropped out, you can operate for almost 5 months without any new revenue coming in. And so when you start talking about benefits, people have to recognize if you're now doubling the cost. So if your labor cost, let's just say your labor cost is, annually, your labor cost is $1 million. When we start talking about benefits, you might as well add another $1 million onto that for benefits. And that's what people don't understand. So folk go, well, I don't get it. I need benefits. And I'm like, I get it. I understand you need benefits. Small business owners say this every day. We know you want benefits, but there's a cost to benefits. There's a cost to health care and dental and things along those lines that people don't necessarily think about when you're not an owner.
Right, and you're right. They don't think about it. They're seeing it from their lens, and we understand that. But it's important for us to, because we have to look at those numbers so that we're here to hire people. And I want to make another point. One of the things is these costs continue to go up. What it does is it impacts our ability and our decision making around who we can hire. What happens for us, Roland, is that, again, we want to be in communities and under-resourced communities, meaning that we want to hire from those communities. We want to work with people and train them. What does that translate to? That we're teaching, that they're untested. When you have to make different decisions about hiring, you're less likely to take risks on the unknown. And so the very people that you set out to help, the same people that the lawmakers say that they want to help, get marginalized, get set to the side, because when I'm paying a higher amount for a salary, I'm looking for the person who's already done this, because the cost of hiring, the cost of labor, the cost of the overhead is too great. And so these are the difficult decisions that small business owners like us are making every day, that set out with a mission to have this particular impact in our communities. And these things like tariffs and increasing health costs and rising costs that we do not control put us in a position rather to have to make other types of decisions. And the folks looking from the outside don't get it. But it's incumbent upon us to understand those numbers and make sure that we're here for another day. It looks like coffee. It looks like it's just coffee. It looks like it should be simple. However, there's all these components to businesses like ours that come into play that require us to really keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening across the landscape of the lawmakers and the tariffs, because it impacts our business each and every time we hear something like that.
And you say the best. The goal is to be here to live another day. All right, Nikki, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate and for the panel, for the questions.
Folks, coming up next, Donald Trump looks like he wants to put boots on the ground in Iran. Looks like the war with Iran could very well be escalating. We'll break that thing down next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. On the Black Star Network, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. The goal is simple: to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. Of course, that supports this show and the other 5 shows on this network. If you want to do that, if you want to contribute, please do so. If you want to use Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. Click that. Use the QR code for credit cards as well. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
A decade of love, joy, and power. Black Voters Matter is 10 years old, and we are just getting started. This is love with a purpose. This is Black joy in motion. This is unstoppable power. Across campuses, neighborhoods, and back roads. Let's go! We show up, not just to vote, but to be seen, to be heard, to belong. We ride together, we organize together. We remind each other that our voices matter, because they always have. Black Voters Matter is about more than ballots. It's about housing and healthcare, clean water and living wages, education, reproductive freedom, and dignity. It's about turning pain into action, turning belief into movement, turning community into power. We don't wait to be invited. We bring the energy. We bring the love. We bring the people. Because when Black communities come together, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is how change happens. This is how history moves. We organize, we build, we win.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hey everybody, I'm T.D. Jakes, and I want to encourage you to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. It'll blow your mind.
Folks, two top Republicans in Congress are blasting Donald Trump and his Pentagon for not giving them more information as it relates to possibly putting troops on the ground in Iran. This, of course, is now entering close to his 30th day. And Mike Rogers, who is the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, as well as Roger Wicker, who is the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, both Republicans, say that they're not getting enough, that they are very frustrated with what is going on. In fact, Mike Rogers told Politico, quote, "We want to know more about what's going on, what the options are, and why they're being considered. We're just not getting enough answers." He said, quote, "This is not just about epic fury. This is a consistent pattern of tagging the base and saying we came over and briefed you, but they're not telling us things." Roger Wicker, when he was told about the comments of his fellow Republican in the House, he said, "Let me put it this way. I can see why he might have said that. I haven't heard his comment. I don't know the context, but I can see why he might have said that. We just wanted them to tell us what's the plan, and we didn't get any answers. I understand they shouldn't give us specific operational details, but generally we should be able to get more texture than we're receiving from them." The Pentagon briefed the top intelligence committee's members on Wednesday. Nancy Mace of South Carolina, Congresswoman, she stormed out of the meeting saying, then posting on social media, just walked out of a House Armed Services briefing on Iran. Let me repeat, I will not support troops on the ground in Iran, even more so after this briefing. Folks, Donald Trump, of course, sent 2,000 members of the 82nd Airborne to the Persian Gulf. The Army has raised its maximum enlistment age to 42 as anxiety grows over a possible military draft during the intensifying conflict in Iran. People up to 42 years old, regardless of prior military experience, can now join the regular Army, the Army National Guard, and the Army Reserve. According to an updated Army regulation, the former maximum enlisted age was 35. Notably, the policy left the minimum age for enlisted unchanged, which is 17 with parental consent or 18 years old. So, Donald Trump also offered Iran this 15-point plan to end the war. They were like, yeah, no, we ain't doing it. Tehran has its own conditions to bring the conflict to an end, including paying reparations for damage. Those terms do not resemble Donald Trump's proposals. They include Iran committing not to build nuclear weapons and to reopen the strategically important Strait of Hormuz. The war began on February 28th with U.S. and Israeli airstrikes, after which Iran widened hostilities by targeting American allies in the Gulf. Israel, though, also is engaging in 48 hours of bombings there as well. Poll research, according to the Pew Public Poll, folks, 6 in 10 disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the Iran war, as many say the decision to use force was absolutely wrong. 3 in 10 say they believe this war will last a year or more. The poll also revealed that more Americans say U.S. action against Iran makes the country and the world less safe. The majority of Americans disapprove of how Trump is handling the war, and they also revealed a wide partisan divide over the initial decision to use military force in Iran and how the U.S. action is going. Let's go to my panel here. The thing here, Philip, when you just look at this here, bottom line is Donald Trump is itching for a war. Iran is not buckling, and the only way they can achieve their goals is to send in troops on the ground. But guess what? You do that, and you're going to see his polling numbers tank even further, because after 20 years in Afghanistan, with what happened in Iraq, Americans do not want to see prolonged action of troops being away from home, stuck in countries in the Middle East fighting Republican wars. Actually, I'm going to go to Rebecca first.
So a lot of the people who supported Trump in 2024, they supported him in part because he said he wasn't going to lead the country into a never-ending war. That was one of the things that he really pushed back hard against Biden-Harris administration on. And, when we look at the military and we look at historically who the military has supported, it has been Trump's party. So now seeing someone who's put us into another quagmire into the Middle East, especially a country that we all know previous presidents have been very clear that it doesn't make sense for us to ever do any type of underground escalation in that particular country. At this point, I've seen some conservative groups reach out to Vance publicly and suggest that he should pull a 25th Amendment. But from talking to folks that I know who are retired military and just listening to a lot of security experts talk about the many impeachable things, but the many potential war crimes that this president has committed based upon this escalation in Iran, is simply ridiculous. And it's really unfair for especially many of those young people who enlisted into the military because they were hopeful of using the military as a way to have a better future. And now that they are being sent into harm's way and for a cause that is not worthy. For a cause that hasn't been well articulated, for a cause that doesn't have the American support behind it, is simply a sad situation. You know what? I would rather that this delusional person in the White House just declares victory, do a mission accomplished banner, and go home.
Patrick?
Well, I think that one of the big problems is that there's a recent memory that the American public is living with. My first war was Desert Storm that I remember. And since then, we have often seen Republican presidents find every reason to go to war against brown people in the desert. And so I think that the legitimacy of the reasons in which we go to war are being questioned because We saw what happened in Iraq. We saw what happened when Biden pulled troops after 20 years in Iraq. And so these things are in our living memory and that we're remembering them. And so I think that when there is no public buy-in, there's a question of political legitimacy and military legitimacy that I think the Republicans had not factored into going into this war.
Zachary, you put ground troops in Iran. You start seeing body bags return home. It is going to be a bleak time at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
It is a bleak time in America anytime a service member's life is lost. And right off the bat, we have lost 13 American service members to this distraction war, also known as Operation Epstein Fury. The Great American Distraction War, also known as Operation Epstein Fury, because make no mistake about it, so much of this has to do with distracting from the things that this president and his administration have done. You talked about Roland, and you said about his falling poll numbers, and he's constantly going towards the bottom. For Donald Trump, there is no bottom. And what's unfortunate is for his true MAGA supporters, there is no bottom, because they're going to stand behind his foolish ways because they're brainwashed and they're part of a cult. But I want to emphasize to the American people that this isn't just about Donald Trump and his poll numbers, because no matter what this delusional man wants, who does indeed need that 25th Amendment to be invoked, he is not going to be able to be president after 2028. He will not be able to be president of the United States. However, there is a Republican who will win the nomination for that party, who can be president, and they are just as responsible for these lives lost. They are just as responsible for those 13 dead service members, for the 5,300 lives lost in this conflict, 5,300 international lives lost. They are responsible. Every Republican who isn't fighting back, every Republican who isn't standing up and talking about this, they're responsible. They are the ones who are supporting this conflict. They are the ones who are supporting the inflation. They are the ones who are supporting the gas prices. We cannot forget them when it's time to vote in 2026 and then again in 2028. All of them are responsible for what this man is being allowed to do.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Time for Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble.
A landmark ruling out of Los Angeles. A jury found Meta and YouTube negligent for failing to warn users about the dangers of their platforms. Jurors awarded $3 million in damages to a 20-year-old woman who says she became addicted to Instagram and YouTube as a child, linking that to serious mental health harms. Meta is responsible for 70% of the payout. YouTube responsible for 30%. Snap and TikTok were also named in the lawsuit, but settled before trial. The case could have major implications, with similar lawsuits from parents and school districts set to go to trial later this year. The state of Minnesota and county officials filed a lawsuit against the federal government on Tuesday, claiming they are being obstructed from investigating the shootings of Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Julio Cesar Sosa Solis by federal agents. The lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia involves Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, Hennepin County District Attorney Mary Mority, and Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans. They all allege that the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security have denied state investigators access to crucial evidence needed for their inquiry into the three shootings. The lawsuit specifically names the Justice's Department, the DHS, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who oversaw an immigration crackdown in Minnesota that happened earlier this year. Renee Good and Alex Preddy were both fatally shot by federal agents employed by the DHS as part of the immigration operation known as Operation Metro Surge that also happened earlier this year. The Texas Supreme Court refused to allow DNA testing for a black man on death row. In 2024, Rodney Reed's case was under legal review due to the claims of new evidence in the 1996 murder of Stacey Stites in Bastrop County, Texas. Reed has maintained his innocence, long seeking the genetic testing of items collected from the crime scene. Reed has said that Stites' fiancé, ex-police officer Jimmy Fennell, raped and strangled her after learning that the white 19-year-old woman was having an affair with Reed, a black man. Finn will spend time in prison for a different sexual assault, but has denied killing Stites. Reed's lawyers argued that Bastrop County District Attorney Byron Cortez refuses to test the murder weapon, a webbed belt used to strangle Stites despite compelling evidence of his innocence. Reed does not have an execution date. Former Justice Department official Kristen Clark is stepping into a new role with the NAACP. Clark, who previously led the Civil Rights Division under President Joe Biden, will now serve as the organization's general counsel, overseeing its legal strategy nationwide. That includes leading litigation on voting rights, gerrymandering, and First Amendment protections at a time the NAACP says those rights are under increasing attack. Before her time at the Justice Department, Clark led the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law and holds degrees from Harvard and Columbia Law. Well, the city of New Orleans has placed liens on the state's first black church, First African Baptist Church, located on 3rd Street. Pastor William Brent is trying to get the historic church designated as a New Orleans landmark. The church, founded in 1826 and recognized as Louisiana's first incorporated African-American congregation, is facing city fines up to $4,000 and liens tied to property neglect. The city has placed 4 liens related to sanitation, weed and plant growth required, paint for protective treatment, and gutters and downspouts. Well, slutty vegan owner Pinky Cole says a creditor seized one of her Georgia homes. Cole rushed to a bankruptcy court after she claimed a creditor seized and locked the doors of her 6-bedroom, 4-bathroom investment home in Loganville. Cole says her lawyer tried to contact Guardian to explain that their actions were improper because the bankruptcy filing had paused any collection efforts. The businesswoman said the seizure is causing extreme financial harm because she needs to rent the property to generate income, and that she has a prospective tenant with a lease date set to start on April 1st. Cole states that she owes millions of dollars and is currently unemployed, aside from the $15,000 that her husband earns. Roland, back to you.
Control room, you got me now? All right, cool. All right, so slightly issue with our DJI, but we got it straight. All right, folks, don't forget to catch the breakdown with Brittany Noble every single day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. Again, the breakdown with Brittany Noble every day, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. All right, when we come back, I'll shop BlackStarNetwork.com Marketplace segment right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just 2 millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, a relationship that we have to have. We're often afraid of it and don't like to talk about it. That's right, we're talking about our relationship with money. And here's the thing, our relationship with money oftentimes determines whether we have it or not. Balancing your relationship with your pocketbook, that's next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
A decade of love, joy, and power. Black Voters Matter is 10 years old, and we are just getting started. This is love with a purpose. This is Black joy in motion. This is unstoppable power. Across campuses, neighborhoods, and back roads. Let's go! We show up, not just to vote, but to be seen, to be heard, to belong. We ride together, we organize together. We remind each other that our voices matter, because they always have. Black Voters Matter is about more than ballots. It's about housing and healthcare, clean water and living wages, education, reproductive freedom, and dignity. It's about turning pain into action, turning belief into movement, turning community into power. We don't wait to be invited. We bring the energy. We bring the love. We bring the people. Because when Black communities come together, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is how change happens. This is how history moves. We organize, we build, we win.
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
How you doing? I'm Mark Curry, and you're watching the Black Star Network. That's why I got these glasses on, because that black star is bright.
Folks, if you're looking to trace your roots, Kenkofa is the perfect app for you. It utilizes historical records, including public cemetery and land records, personal family archives, and oral histories. The creators, cousins Jordan Brunson and Tamisha Rudridge, discovered their family ties while conducting research and wanted to make the process easier. For others, they join me now. Glad to have y'all here. Okay. So, all right. Okay, let's say somebody wants to use this. A lot of times people are utilizing DNA, and they're like, hey, what about DNA results? But this is different. This is literally being able to find your lineage. How does it do that? What's the key thing that you have to input to make this actually happen where it's accurate?
Yeah, Kenkofa is a web app to preserve Black legacy. And so we think about that not just as things like family tree and DNA, but really the stories, the memories, the things that really make Black folks, from recipes to family gathering memories, family reunions, Black history, as you see on the screen. It really just makes up and tells our unique stories. And so the app that we built is really meant to support families, communities, organizations, and the different ways that we have lived and the ways that we tell and hold our story. So sometimes that may look like oral histories. That may look like, again, the gatherings and traditions that we have, the old photos that live in a shoebox or home videos that sit at home or that we play when the time comes. Kenkofa is really a home for those memories to live and for them to be shared.
And so what we do a little bit differently is allow people to preserve the things that they already have. So a lot of the other platforms require you to know a lot of information to start. And we start with what you do have at home. And then from there, you can track memories. And once you learn different names and collaborate with your family, you might be matched to different records over time and different stories in your community.
All right. And so in terms of, how are you pulling these things together? And so how are you scouring the various databases? You said, cemeteries, but we know, as you go back, there are a lot of Black cemeteries that did not have headstones and records.
Yes. So first, I want to break it down just a little bit further. So the Black cemetery work that we do is specifically around descendant communities. And so, for instance, in Dallas, we're working with 10th Street Historic District. And one of the ways that we were able to Restore the segregated cemetery that has missing headstones is actually looking at things like death certificates, talking to different families, looking at birth records, looking at different things. But that's not the bulk of what the platform does. That is our community history work. And some of the other ways that we're able to do that is from funeral programs that people keep in Bibles. Like my granddad keeps a Bible full of obituaries of our family history over time.
That could also be, again, the story. So thinking about how you might use Kinkofa, you might have certain memories or stories that have been passed on in your family, and Kinkofa allows you to record those stories with loved ones, to upload, again, the photos, the home videos, the documents, the things that tell that story. And like Misha said, the things that you have at home oftentimes, which is really how a lot of Black families get started or think about passing on their family history. It's what we already have at home, the things that we know and the things that matter to us that we continue to pass on. And the digital platform is really meant to serve as a personal archive. So think of it as a place that you can put those memories safely. You can control who has access to them. So it's not like just putting it into a public archive or public space. It's about privacy. It's about, again, telling our stories with dignity and pride, and being able to share and collaborate with others who often need to have access to those stories or they go lost.
Now, if you've done previous research, like my sister, she has utilized African Ancestry.com and some other platforms to put together a pretty comprehensive family tree. And so how can you sort of utilize other platforms to cull all this together?
Yes, so we actually let people go beyond their family trees. We do have a tool where you can bring over the trees from other platforms and then try to add records to them. So let's say that it is your great-grandmother and your cousin or your aunt has the obituary or funeral program, maybe a birth certificate, a yearbook. Some of the other platforms don't allow you to upload those kind of things or share the memories behind them in a way that is public to and private to your family in the way that you might want to. So like, as you're seeing here.
This is a view of actually my account, my maternal family. And so here I've kind of created spaces around certain memories, whether it's reunion photos, home videos, old family photos. This is actually an image from the early 1940s of my great-grandmother's house. And this is a way for me to kind of share that memory that I have with my family members, but also to learn more. So you can do things like record a voice note to this memory. You can tag who's in it, and we can define things in the image or the video or the thing that matter to us. You can leave comments. And so that's one way that we're able to, again, collaborate and get more of the story so that we can kind of piece things together and have a deeper understanding of who we are and where we come from.
Yes, and on the platform, we also allow you to do things like record oral history. So that's another thing that's different. And then also leave things for the future. So again, we're not just focused on the past, we're focused on what you have now and how you pass that forward as well. So we don't have to be in a position again to say, hey, we've lost our history.
This is a look at some of the tools that are... Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. This is just a look at some of the tools that we have on Kinkofa. And so we mentioned oral history recording. There's an app called Rememory, which allows you to use different prompt decks to help you get the conversation started and record so that, again, those stories don't go lost, but they could also be easeful in how we tell them. They have different topics from things like foodways and recipes to growing up, holiday traditions, and they're really a way for us to think about how can we get these memories out that sometimes aren't easy to tell and have a process and a place to put them. There's many more of these mini apps coming. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, questions from the panel. Rebecca, you first.
Okay, so this is really cool. Have you all connected with some of the historically Black towns? Like, for instance, my family has a historic Black town. It's a freedmen's colony. We have a museum, but we haven't really digitized a lot of the assets and a lot of the things. Like, we have records of my great-great-great-grandfather's last bill of sale during slavery. We have birth certificates. We have weddings, documents. But can you speak about that aspect of it?
Yes, so that's something, a big project we're working on right now. So for the last few years here in Dallas, we have been preserving the story of 10th Street Historic District, the largest freedmen town in the nation. That's still intact. And one of the things that we've done with that community is record the elders, digitize family archives, and just records that we can find from different libraries and cultural heritage organizations that are nearby. And what we've done with that one is actually put it in the Library of Congress. And so for the last few years, we've been working through that. And on April 1st, we're launching a digital museum for it. We've also done some work with Africatown. We live in Oklahoma, so we know about all the Black towns there. And the same with Texas. I'm from Texas, so I'm very, very excited to work with and connect with more freedmen's towns over time.
It's an hour 15 just south of Dallas.
All right.
Hello. So I'm very excited about this.
Likewise, definitely let's stay connected.
All right, Zachary.
So I'm an educator and a content creator, and I am really also very excited about this project and what you guys are doing and how it's going to contribute to the Black community as a whole. So as I'm getting ready to think about how I'm going to share this with my audience, what would be the quickest, most succinct elevator pitch that I can give to get them excited about what you've got?
Yes, so Kinkofa is an app for preserving Black legacy. Is the easiest way to say it. We allow you to upload your family memories, record oral histories, and collaborate with your family to keep things in the family.
Patrick.
First, thank you all for doing this work. It's so important and so precious for our community. I'm wondering two things. I'm wondering about patterns that you see. As you're gathering information, are you seeing that our stories are cross-connected in terms of not just the narrative, but what our needs are to preserve our narrative? And then as you collect the data, are you seeing a shared history from the collective stories that you've gathered so far?
Absolutely. I think I'll take one half of that question. So one of the biggest things we're seeing is issues with heirs property. So that's when folks are not able to, when homes and different property have been passed on without wills. And we've seen people not be able to access resources to keep the historic home in the house and end up losing it. It gets deemed as a public nuisance and then tore down. And then, there goes the neighborhood. We've seen in Tulsa where there's a legacy scholarship, Tulsa Reconciliation Scholarship that is partially targeted towards descendants and people need to prove their genealogy. We've seen it in housing programs in Seattle where people have to prove their family history. And if you don't know those things, it's really hard to access. And some of the other connections we're finding are a little bit way further back in historical.
Yeah, I think those are some of the some of the clear systemic patterns that we're seeing. I think the others are just the legacy that we're building in or following, thinking about how Black folks have always been the stewards and carriers of our stories, going back to Alex Haley and many others before him. And we've always been innovators in how we think about preserving and carrying on our stories and how we tell them. We've been influencers in that as well, thinking about how genealogy and family history came to be popular. It was Black folks who kind of put it on. And we're following on that legacy and how we're using technology to save these stories. Additionally, I would just say that I think there's a pattern of Black folks wanting to discover and tell stories. It may not always come across, but I think what we're seeing, especially on social media, on TikTok, we're seeing younger generations, Gen Z, et cetera, telling stories differently. And so the thing that I would just call out here is that genealogy and family history is often thought of as something for old folks. And now we're seeing younger folks taking interest in rediscovering these stories and telling them differently.
All right. So the question is that from a storage space? What do you have there? Also, what is there an actual monthly cost?
Yeah, so you can sign up for Kinkofa today. You can go to kinkofa.com, KINKOFA, and you can create an account for free. You'll get up to 1 gigabyte of space that you can use to preserve photos, videos, documents, again, the things that matter to you. And you can also have access to more space by subscribing. Monthly subscriptions start at $10 a month. We also have family plans that allow you to kind of share that space and have access to more space and features with family members. Pretty soon, we'll also be offering some solutions for what we call GLAMs. So those are galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, and being able to support both their patrons and their organizations and archives.
And I think the most important thing that you get with your membership is access to different apps. So the oral history recording app we mentioned, we have family tree building and family reunion planning coming soon.
All right, then, folks, check out Ken Kofa, Kinkofa, and we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, let me thank my panel, Patrick, as well as Zachary and Rebecca for joining us. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks so very much for being with us. Going to go to break. We come back. Going to play the speech of the Ghanaian president where he laid out why they were pursuing this vote that took place at the United Nations today. 123 countries voted yes to call the transatlantic slave trade the greatest crime of our time. 3 countries voted against it: the United States, Israel, and Argentina. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support the work that we do. Join our Brain and Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. That's for credit cards as well. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And of course, folks, don't forget, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina tomorrow with the Alphas at the regional convention there. And so look forward to sharing with you more. All right, we come back. The Ghanaian president speaks to the United Nations. Back in a moment.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
My name is Bill Duke, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Truth begins with language, with the power that words hold to shape consciousness and to shift perspectives to propel an action or other. I therefore offer this truth as a starting point. There's no such thing as a slave. There were human beings who were trafficked and then enslaved by people who believed they could own those human beings as chattels, as their personal property. Some will hear this and think I'm splitting hairs. Isn't that the same thing, they might ask? No, it's not. Not at all the same thing. Not if you acknowledge an individual's humanity. Not if you respect an individual's basic right to dignity. The entire transatlantic slave trade was designed to deny African people their humanity. And that denial was premised on a racial hierarchy with no basis in fact or science, a racial hierarchy that deemed whiteness superior and blackness inferior. The atrocities that were committed against enslaved Africans, the myriads of injustice that were born of slavery and carried forward into successive social framework, took place specifically because those persons were considered objects, not human beings. So when discussing slavery and its resulting institutions and practices, we must always start by reclaiming racial equality, the dignity of Africans, the humanity of our ancestors who were enslaved, and as a matter of course, our own humanity. Recently, someone asked me to explain the importance of the resolution on the declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as a grievous crime against humanity. And I responded without pause or hesitation, and I'd like to share what I told him. This resolution allows us as a global community to collectively bear witness to the plight of about more than 12.5 million men, women, and children whose homes, communities, names, families, hopes, dreams, futures, and lives were stolen from them over the course of 400 years. I speak these words today not only for Ghana, but also in solidarity with the rest of Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the wider diaspora, and indeed all people of good conscience throughout the world. This resolution is a pathway to healing and reparative justice. This resolution is a safeguard against forgetting. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, violence begins with language. When words are weaponized or to codify abuse, when people are called out of their names, regardless of their state of dress, when slaves were captured, they were always stripped of their clothing while being kept in the dungeons of the fortresses that had been built on the African coast by the European traders. They were forced with their limbs chained and shackled into the hold of cargo ships. They remained naked, packed like sardines during the month-long journey through the Middle Passage. Not all those who were loaded onto the ships survived the voyage. A number of the ships sank with their entire human cargo. Others who fell sick were thrown overboard. And a few who preferred death to captivity voluntarily jumped overboard. It is believed that 10 to 20% of enslaved people died in the Middle Passage. Whenever a ship arrived at its destination, the enslaved people, still naked, were taken to the market where they were inspected and appraised like livestock. They were then placed on an auction block in front of an audience of potential buyers and sold to the highest bidder. Once they arrived on the plantation where they would work and live for a lifetime, they were also stripped of their names. And so you were no longer Fatu, or Kofi, or Bubakar, or Nanayao, or Emenka, Nayong, or Hamisu. You were given names like Ben, Jemima, John, Toby, or Mary. In addition to these new names, they were also called girl or boy, regardless of how old you were. And maybe I should also say that filthy N-word. If you ever needed a surname, it would be that of your master. And sometimes they were branded like cattle with the plantation's insignia or logo. There were sugar plantations. There were also coffee, cotton, tobacco, and cocoa plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas. South America had diamond and gold mines as well. And also the production of indigo took place in Jamaica. The people who were enslaved labored on those plantations from sunrise to sunset. And the conditions under which they worked were brutal. They were beaten occasionally to the point of death. They were underfed. They were kept in cramped quarters and often died young, if not from labor, then from disease. There are even records of some enslaved women
who were kept as breeders. Let's not mince words, ladies and gentlemen. Business was booming because when labor is free, profit margins are huge. African lives were disposable. If too many of the enslaved Africans died, more were captured from their homes on the continent, enslaved and trafficked. During conversations about slavery, the point at which euphemisms are introduced, and there's a rush to talk about abolition. But we cannot afford to look away. This is precisely the part when we should pay close attention, because the devil is in the detail. And I'm going to share 4 trafficking destinations with you. Remember, when you hear these numbers, that it's not about data. These are about human beings and human lives. Roughly 6 million enslaved Africans were trafficked to Brazil, which is the 5th largest nation in the world, stretching 4,400 kilometers from north to south and 4,320 kilometers from east to west. Almost 2 million enslaved Africans were trafficked to Jamaica, which was the most profitable of all sugar-producing locations. Jamaica is 235 kilometers long and between 34 and 84 kilometers wide, depending on which point you are located. About 500,000 enslaved Africans were trafficked to America from the early 17th century, when the first ship arrived, to the 19th century, when chattel slavery was eventually abolished. America grew from 3 colonies to an independent nation with 36 states. Over 450,000 enslaved Africans were trafficked to Barbados, an island that is 34 kilometers wide and 34 kilometers long and 23 kilometers wide. Before the trafficking of enslaved Africans, plantation labor in Barbados came from white indentured servants who were usually Irish. There were 2 major problems with indentured servants. One was that they eventually had to be granted their freedom. And the other was that if they ran away, catching them proved challenging because they blended in, they were white. In 1661, Barbados enacted a code for the enslaved. And in the preamble, it said, Negroes are described as, and I quote, a heathenish, brutish, and uncertain, dangerous kind of people, quotations closed. It goes on to explain that this is why there must be a set of laws detailing how they should be punished. Clause 2 of the same code details what to do if any Negro man or woman shall offer any violence to any Christian, as by striking or the like. And it goes on to say that if it is a first offense, the Negro should be severely whipped by the constable. However, if it's the Negro's second offense, he shall be severely whipped, his nose slit, and be burned in the face. The code gave owners and overseers the ability to torture, maim, and even kill enslaved Africans with impunity. And became something of a template for the rest of the Anglo-Atlantic world. In 1662, a year after Barbados enacted this code, a legal doctrine was established to set judicial precedent in the American colony of Virginia. It was titled Partus Sequitur Ventrum, for those of you who understand Latin, which translates from Latin as, what is born follows the womb. This legal framework ensured that all children born of enslaved women would also automatically be enslaved regardless of who the father was. And it is important to note that many enslaved women were impregnated because they were raped by the plantation owners or their overseers. But what this law did, even in cases where a baby was not the product of rape was to strip the child of its paternity in the eyes of the law. That child, as an enslaved person, was property that could be given or sold at its owner's whim. The doctrine was adopted throughout the Americas, including in Brazil. People will sometimes try to put a disclaimer on slavery by insisting that you cannot use the social norms of today to judge the actions and events that took place in the past. Well, such people are loud and wrong. Just because everybody is doing something doesn't make it right. Slavery is wrong now, and it was wrong then. For as long as Africans have been trafficked and enslaved, there have been abolitionists who have spoken up against it. The first slave ship landed in America in 1619. Opposition to chattel slavery was voiced and mentioned in passing in documents. But in 1688, the Germantown Friends, a group of Quakers, put out a formal written protest against slavery. And in it they wrote, and let me quote, "Now, though they are black, we cannot conceive there is more liberty to have them slaves as it is to have other white ones. There's a saying that we shall do to all men like as we would have done to ourselves, making no difference of what generation, descent, or color they are." Quotations close. Your Excellencies, erasure begins with language. When words are used as a sleight of hand to gaslight, to trick you into doubting what you know to be true. It is when words are used to create mythology. When they are spoken, the volume gradually decreases with each repetition until it becomes a full verbal reduction. The legendary American jazz player Miles Davis said, and I quote, "It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play." When it comes to the contributions that Africa has made to enriching Europe and building the so-called New World, the silence is deafening. We have paved roads through mountains, we've put down railroad tracks, we've constructed buildings, laying brick after brick. We have cut sugar, cane, we've picked cocoa and cotton. We've descended into mines to unearth precious metals and stones, and we have wet nurse babies. We've paid the price of admission with the blood of our ancestors, and still what greets us at the door is silence. What we're met with is mythology. And I'll explain what mythology I mean. In 2015, McGraw-Hill Education, one of the largest publishers in the United States, released a geography textbook that is used in over 1,000 school districts in Texas. The book stated that millions of workers were brought from Africa to work on agricultural plantations. It said workers, not slaves. A family complained, and the book was pulled off the shelves. But now there's another one. There's a U.S. organization called PragerU. I hope I got the pronunciation right, PragerU or PragerU. On the organization's website, it's described as the world's leading conservative nonprofit that is focused on changing minds through the creative use of digital media. Now look what they did. They created animated videos which are used as supplemental educational material in public school classrooms in 11 states. And in one video, they use a young boy and his teenage sister, And this young boy and his teenage sister are confused about why some people celebrate Columbus Day and others celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. This organization uses a time travel app, and this young teenager and his sister find themselves on a ship with Christopher Columbus, who tells them all about how the Carib people, the indigenous people of the Lesser Antilles in the Caribbean, were violent and uncivilized cannibals. The children then ask him to explain why he'd enslaved people. To that, Christopher Columbus is said to have responded, "Slavery is as old as time, and it has taken place in every corner of the world, normalization." And he says, being taken as a slave is better than being killed. No, I don't see the problem. Columbus then accuses the children of coming to his time and trying to judge him by the standards of their time. In another animated video, the same brother and sister use the same time travel app and find themselves in the year 1852, standing in front of Frederick Douglass. And he tells them that he is working to abolish slavery, a system in which people make other people work for long hours with no pay. The sad fact, he explains, is that slavery has existed everywhere in the world for thousands of years. Here in the United States, Black history courses are being removed from school curricula. Schools are being mandated to stop teaching students about the truth of slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses. Books about those topics are being banned in schools and public libraries. Museums, art centers, and other institutions whose budgets rely in any way on public funds are being prohibited from scheduling exhibitions and programs or from displaying materials promoting racial awareness or Black history. Much like the law that was put in place to regulate the punishment of the enslaved in Barbados, these policies are becoming a template for other governments as well as some private institutions. At the very least, they are slowly normalizing the erasure. They are slowly normalizing erasure. Earlier, when discussing the importance of this resolution, I said it was a safeguard against forgetting. This is the type of forgetting that I was referring to. But there are other types of forgetting as well. The great Jamaican philosopher-poet Robert Nesta Marley famously said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." I want to repeat an encouragement that I offered as part of this address, one that is companion to the truth that I began with. When discussing slavery and its resulting institutions and practices, we must always start by reclaiming racial equality, the dignity of Africans, the humanity of our ancestors who were enslaved, and as a matter of course, our own humanity. We must also remember to reclaim our humanity, because when we absorb too much of the language of violence and erasure, we can stop hearing the language of truth that exists within us. When we're in that state of mind, our minds become enslaved. In his book, the Guyanese writer Walter Rodney quotes a Dutch traveler's first impressions upon visiting the Nigerian city of Benin. He says the towns seemed very great. When you enter into it, you go into a great broad street. The town is composed of 30 main streets, very straight, 120 feet wide. The houses are close to one another, arranged in very good order. These people are in no way inferior to the Dutch as regards cleanliness. This was his quotation. In 1531, a Portuguese sailor, Vicente Pegado, traveled to the city of Great Zimbabwe, and this was what he wrote. He said, "Among the gold mines and the inland plains between the Limpopo and Zambezi River is a fortress built of stone. of marvelous size, and there appears to be no mortar joining the stones. This edifice is almost surrounded by hills, upon which are others resembling it in the fashioning of stone and the absence of mortar. And one of them is a tower more than 12 fathoms high. A 2016 article in the Guardian newspaper highlighted the city of Great Zimbabwe, built between the 11th and 14th century. And the article described a centuries-old drainage system that remained operational, funneling water from the houses and enclosures down into the valley. And the article also disclosed how, in the 19th century, European visitors to this abandoned medieval city in Great Zimbabwe refused to believe that indigenous Africans could have built such an extensive network of monuments. Here's the thing. The greatness that is within us will always outweigh the injustices that have been visited against us. Despite what we've been through for centuries, our survival is a testament to that fact. In closing, I would like to offer this quote by Nelson Mandela. And he says, "Our human compassion binds us the one to the other, not in pity or patronizing, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future. Truth begins with language." Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, tomorrow we vote on a historic resolution that will be another step in the journey of establishing truth. We stand united as Africans, whether on the continent or any part of the world, and link up with people of conscience around the world to seek truth and justice and restore the dignity and humanity of victims of the slave trade. This is a resolution of destiny. And I hope all of you will vote tomorrow to establish truth so that together we can pass this historic resolution and finally acknowledge the full horrors of these transgressions against humanity of the approximately 15 million human beings who were enslaved.
That's it for us. If you want to, of course, support the work that we do, join our Bring the Funk fan club. You can, of course, contribute via Cash App using Stripe QR code. You see it right here. As for also credit cards as well. Checks and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle. Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Star Network swag by going to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Our t-shirts, our hoodies, our wall art mugs, all that good stuff. And of course, our black-owned products. All these products right here, folks, that you see are available on our site, shopblackstarnetwork.com. And so you can check it all out. Go to the website. You got HBCU gear. You got, of course, facial stuff. You got chips, and we got bags and dolls and toilet paper. All of these black-owned products, you can get them at shopblackstarnetwork.com. So when you buy these products through our website, you're also supporting this show as well. So black-owned, black companies helping black-owned media. So go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Send it around. Tell your friends and family to go there as well. We should also download the app Fan Base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. Be sure to get that. Also, remember, Brittany Noble, you can check her out on The Breakdown. Brittany Noble every day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow, right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered.